But one that caught my attention was a project that was automating phone calls to make spa and restaurant reservations. And I showed it to my wife and I talked about the speech recognition, the NLP, the speech synthesis. And she looked at me really funny and she went, "So you have this incredible technology and all you're doing is making spa reservations? Like, thank you for changing the world, Silicon Valley." And I was like, "Well, that's not the point. Like, check out the technology." And she's like, "That is the point. If someone would bring this to healthcare, it would fundamentally change healthcare because so much data exchanges hands over phone calls and faxes."
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode. Today, I'm very excited. I have a special founder with me. They've been doing a lot, and I've been following their journey. And the thing that they are creating is really powerful, and we need it in healthcare today. Um, Today, we have Ankit Jain. He's a leader in tech and in healthcare AI space. He is the founder of the company called Infinitus Systems. He has a rich background that includes roles as the director of engineering at Google and VP of product at SimilarWeb. Ankit has also founded Quetra, a mobile intelligence startup acquired by SimilarWeb. At Infinitus, he is solving healthcare's workforce challenges with voice AI agents that can take on administrative and clinical tasks, helping to alleviate the staff burden and improve patient outcome. And I highly recommend to go to their website and check the AI agents because they are hyper realistic and they are very cool. And I can't wait to put my hands on one of them and talk to them because they're really going to change how healthcare is practiced. Ankit, welcome to the show. I'm very excited to have you today.
Ruben, thank you so much for having me. I was looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much. Can you share a bit about your journey, like how you end up founding Infinitus? Like, what was the idea or the moment that told you, okay, so healthcare needs this? Because I completely agree with you. Healthcare needs this.
So one of the things that you didn't say in my background was I spent a couple of years on the venture capital side. So after I sold Quetra to SimilarWeb,
Gotcha.
I spent some time there at SimilarWeb, and then friends at Google pulled me back to say, "Hey, we're this AI thing is becoming real,
Yeah.
especially with the breakthroughs with the transformer models." And right before the attention is all you can need paper was published, a couple of the leaders there said, "We want to start a venture fund focused on AI. You understand the
Hmm.
startup, you understand the AI space. Why don't you come and help us start a venture fund?" So I went back to Google to start Gradient Ventures, and I helped run it for a couple of years. And while
Oh,
doing that,
wow.
it was fascinating to see many of the horizontal infrastructure companies and vertical applications of AI. But one that caught my attention was a project that was automating phone calls to make spa and restaurant reservations. And I showed it to my wife and I talked about the speech recognition, the NLP, the speech synthesis. And she looked at me really funny and she went, "So you have this incredible technology and all you're doing is making spa reservations? Like, thank you for changing the world, Silicon Valley." And I was like, "Well, that's not the point. Like, check out the technology." And she's like, "That is the point. If someone would bring this to healthcare, it would fundamentally change healthcare because so much data exchanges hands over phone calls and faxes. As patients, we often are getting information about our healthcare over the phone. It's a nurse calling us a week before our colonoscopy telling us how we do bowel prep. It's someone calling us to reschedule an appointment or deal with a referral and tell us that it's going to be delayed because there's a prior authorization required, or someone in the back office calling an insurance company to push on getting an approval for a prior auth before a surgery can happen. It's not APIs that are connecting healthcare entities with each other, it's phone calls and faxes.
I completely agree with you. I'm just interested. Does your wife have any background in healthcare or?
Yeah, so she spent her entire career in healthcare, in the healthcare administration side. And so that's why when she
Oh,
heard the technology promise, she said, "I wish that
yeah.
solved my problems."
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I'm so happy she saw this because like me too, like I see a huge use for it. I was just wondering, so so you came into the healthcare side through this, but like what are the things that you learned at Google, SimilarWeb, and Quetra that influence how you approach Infinitus and approach the building a company in healthcare?
I mean, there's so many things, right? So I'll give you an example from each of them. I was fortunate enough to join Google and specifically the Android team at Google in its
Yeah.
infancy when it was very small, and I saw probably a 10,000x growth during my period there for Android. And seeing how you build technology that scales, how you build teams that scale, and how it's okay to, from time to time, rip the band-aid and rebuild because now you need to build for the next set of scale is important. At the same time, you want to make sure what you release is not over-engineered to the point where you're engineering for 100 million users when you have 10,000, and that slows you down. The balance of speed and scalability is something that I think many of the teams at Google that I have been a part of were very good at doing, of getting something out there and iterating. Um, when we started Quetra, I think there's a lot of things I learned. I was a first-time founder. I kind of dove into it because the technology promise was real. We wanted to personalize experiences um, on mobile devices, whether it was content personalization, ad personalization. But we spent 18 months building the technology, and then I went to have my first customer meeting. So and then we realized the customers were actually looking for something very different than what we had built. And so we had to pivot. But that was 18 months that went almost to
Yeah,
waste. And so the biggest lesson I learned there was it's actually important to have customer validation even before
early
you write
on.
a line of code, before you build a business. And we've brought that learning to Infinitus, where before we even incorporated the company, we had a number of customers that had said, if you build this, we will pay you a lot for it. And so that business validation before building the technology is important. It should be business driving technology, not technology driving business for the kind of company that we're building. And then at SimilarWeb, I learned a very interesting lesson. Again, we pivoted the business at Quetra. We started building a competitive intelligence product in the mobile world. SimilarWeb had it on the web, and by acquiring us, they were able to build this platform. But that was the first time I was part of a team that where I was close enough to an enterprise sales team, and the way enterprise marketing worked, the way enterprise sales worked, it was a machine, and it was fascinating to see the planning cycles and the way it was executed. It was. I always thought sales was about just going in front of someone and telling a great story, and of course that's how sales happens. And I think SimilarWeb was the first time that I understood that there is a science behind go-to-market motions. As a technologist, as an
Yeah.
engineer, I had never been part of that kind of an organization, and it was beautiful to watch. The engineer in my mind was actually really happy to realize that go-to-market is also a science, but one that you have to learn in a very different way. And then the last thing I did before Infinitus was Gradient Ventures, and being on the venture capital side, I was seeing pitches after pitches. So the value of storytelling became apparent. The value of seeing what the difference between a great storyteller, a good storyteller, and not so good storyteller is obvious to most people. But the power of great, simple storytelling is something that I still strive to grow into. I think it's important when you're trying to raise money. It's important when you're trying to close your first customer, your first hire, or just inspire a group of people. And if you want to be a leader, that ability to break down stories is so incredibly important.
I completely agree with you. I think you remind me of one of the books I read recently. It's a classic, The Hard Things About the Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. It's how you tell people, how you convince people about your vision in the hard times, how you tell them that's the picture is and push through those hard times because we're going to achieve this dream. I think that's the most important job of a CEO.
Even more basic, it's important to have a dream. And it's
Yeah.
important to be honest about the dream. It doesn't matter whether the dream is I want to make a lot of money or I want to change the world or I want to improve healthcare. It's important to know your dream, be honest about it, and be vocal about it. Because if you're vocal about your dream, then people can decide, do they want to be part of your dream or do they not want to be part of your dream? And if they want to be part of their dream, then they'll make it happen. But if they don't know what they're choosing, then it's very hard to get them to follow you.
Yeah, I completely agree. Talking about the hard times, Ankit, I want to hear your thoughts. Like lots of people, when they come to healthcare and they want to innovate, this is not your regular marketplace. You create a product, you go and sell it to your customer, and then you close the deal in one day. There are so many difficulties. What do you think the biggest or what are one of the or many of the biggest challenges you faced when you came and you wanted to build in healthcare?
I'll be vocal about one of my dreams. One of my dreams is to close a healthcare deal in one day. That would be amazing. Um, but I think there's people talk about how healthcare is slow. People talk about how it takes forever to get things done. But I think sometimes it's important to step back and realize that changes in healthcare affect all of us. They
Yeah,
affect the
I
whole
agree.
system. And
That's a
so
good
a little
point.
bit of judiciousness and making sure we're not cluttering the healthcare system is actually very important. Everyone in Silicon Valley has brilliant ideas, or so they would like to believe, about how they want to change any industry, including healthcare. But if you are the doctor who goes in and sees patients all day long, the one thing you want out of your technology is stability. You want it to be great, you want it to be cutting edge, but you don't want your UI to change every single day because you don't want to spend half your day understanding what is the new method. You want to spend most of your day serving patients.
Yeah.
And so many of these so-called gatekeepers in healthcare, whether it is the procurement teams, whether it is the IT organizations, or whether it's the operations teams or the innovation teams, one of the things I've learned that they are gauging is a vendor going to be around for a long time? Because it takes a while
Hmm.
to adopt somebody, but if they go poof out of business, well, that's time wasted, change
Yeah.
management, and they're gauging that. The second thing they're gauging is this technology a stopgap measure, which sometimes is okay, or is this helping build the future of their vision as a healthcare enterprise? And the way you prioritize each one is different. If it's a stopgap measure, sometimes they go, is this going to solve my problem for today? Is this going to solve my problem for the next year or two? Or is this going to just, by the time I implement it, I'm not going to need it anymore? And so it's important to view some of the things that seem frustrating in healthcare from the perspective of those adopting change. And once you do that, you realize that it's actually really powerful what the system is doing. It's frustrating as an innovator. Don't get me wrong. I wish I could sell faster. I wish I could go everywhere faster. But once you get in there and you become part of the machinery that moves things forward, you go, I understand why there were these checks and balances. Do I wish you could change the UI on doctors every single day? Not really, because when I go to my doctor's office, I much rather that person be present there for me and focus on me rather than trying to figure out what they should be doing on their UI.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think the UI is something very, and thank you for bringing that up because, like, as a physician, I really complain about the UI and how it changes quickly, and then figuring out UI in a busy day, it's like something you don't want to play with, especially like when you're running from one clinic to another clinic to see patients, like especially if you're dealing with high risk stakes and stuff like that. I want to add like one more point. One of the things I also noticed, like from talking to healthcare executives, I think one of the important things is how this technology can save me money because of the increased cost, enormous cost of treating patients, and then the margins of healthcare just becoming narrow and narrow. I think one of the important things we should focus on as people who are bringing technology to healthcare is like how can we save hospitals money because hospitals are really struggling with this.
I think it's important to talk about the cost saving part of it. But I was talking to
Yeah.
somebody earlier today who said, AI has a lot of potential around the world. That
Hmm.
said, in most of the world, work is being done, and the hope is AI makes it faster, better, cheaper.
Correct.
The opportunity in healthcare, there's some of that, but the bigger opportunity in healthcare is all the work that isn't even getting done because we don't have the people to do it. So it's
Yeah.
not just about faster, better, cheaper. There's some of that, but the bigger thing is what are all the things we know a good or perfect system would have that we're not getting to today? If you know a flu shot is good for the ecosystem, then you should reach out to every member and say you haven't gotten your flu shot. We can debate whether that flu shots are good or bad, but hypothetically, if flu shots are good, everyone should get a
Yeah.
reach out that you should get your flu shot. Or if you think dental cleanings are important, there should be more push to get people their dental cleanings, but we just don't have the workforce to do that. AI
Correct.
complement our teams, can elevate our teams by giving resources in a scarce resource environment. It can create abundance in a place of scarcity. So I think uniquely, healthcare has this opportunity to adopt technology that allows us to create the perfect world that we didn't have the resources to do today in a budget conscious way. And that's how I would kind of reframe the cost question. I think, yes, you can save cost, but you can also do things which then lead to better outcomes and reduce cost on a much greater scale.
Oh, I completely agree with you. I think And thank you for bringing that up. Like, especially, I think you guys are doing this at Infinitus. And like, for example, if I have a cohort of like 5,000 females or like women who are living in a XYZ community and they need breast cancer screening, like we don't have the enough manpower, as you mentioned, to call them and like say, hey, like you should come to a mammogram or a breast cancer screening or colonoscopy, as you mentioned. So I think thank you for bringing that up because that's an important point too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanna understand a bit more about you before talking about Infinitus. So, um, tell me a bit about like the low moments in your career, moments of failure that shaped how or change how you approach problem solving. What difficulties you faced in the past that really changed and shaped who you are now as a CEO?
No, there's so many. I think all of us um, go through our ups, go through our downs. I talked about one example where we 18 months at Quetra, we were heads down building because that's what we knew how to do. We were a bunch of engineers that were coding away and thought we can go change how the mobile landscape worked. And then we went to market and we said, "Would you like to buy this?" And people said, "Not exactly. I don't. You're telling me you've got good data. Everybody else tells me they've got good data. How do I know that's the case?" I'm like, "Dude, I used to run a lot of Google Play. I understand mobile." Like, that's nice, but I have to test it. And you realize that it's a trustless system in some ways. And
Yeah,
that was a really interesting punch to the gut to go, I guess business is not just about trust, it's about results, it's about outcomes.
correct.
Um,
Yeah,
and making sure you know what outcomes you align on. That was one. I think on the on the venture side, it's been an interesting journey for me. I've invested in a lot of companies uh, while I was a venture capitalist and now more as an angel investor. And it's interesting to see, and it's a learning experience because it's interesting to see how companies change directions and how investing in good people is more important than necessarily the best ideas or the best initial entry point because good people figure things out. And I think we really take that to heart at Infinitus, where we focus on good, hungry, curious people. Because if you have that at large scale, you can change the world. It's better than someone who's best at one thing and one thing alone. It's better to have the curious, hungry people who figure out how to do those things. And so, those are a couple of things that um, I use as a North Star for myself, which is always hear the customer loud and clear and figuring out what to build, and then build a team full of great people because they will then solve any problem that you have or your customers have. And that those two things together build a very solid business.
yeah, I completely agree. I think venture capital or angel investing, it's all about the game of finding the great people with the right idea. People who people are people are the ones who change industry. I wanna switch gears now. I want to talk about Infinitus. Of course, like for people who are listening to us, please go to the website. Amazing things they are doing at Infinitus. But I want to hear from you. Can you walk me through like the core functionalities? What are the main things that, let's say I'm a hospital CEO or I have a practice, I'm listening to this. What are the core things that Infinitus can do for me?
So what we've built is a platform that enables us to design, build, and deploy voice agents and voice co-pilots.
Hmm.
All around the world, we're hearing about voice AI, and we're hearing about how you can now build these agents that can complete tasks. So to us, a voice agent is a piece of software that can complete a task from start to finish. And a co-pilot is something that is sitting side by side with our customers' employees and making them more efficient. So two categories of offerings that we have. Example voice AI agents, and we've got hundreds of these, but I'll give a couple of examples. If you are running a cancer center, for every patient who gets referred in, you are probably doing a benefit verification to figure out what's covered, what's
Correct.
not covered, is a prior authorization required. You're collecting 80 to 100 pieces of information from the payer. Some of this you can get electronically, some of this on a phone call. Our AI agent will get all the data and give it back to you in a structured format. We, on average, save 35 minutes per invocation of that AI agent. That's an example. That's an administrative voice AI agent. On the clinical side, if you're a Medicare Advantage payer, you might, for every new member that you get, you need to do a health risk assessment to figure out exactly what conditions a patient has, which then allows you to do your HCC coding and figure out what visits happen. The same thing, by the way, any value-based care provider has to do as well to know
Yeah.
the full condition set of that patient. So these are examples of voice agents that are able to complete tasks end to end. Administrative ones like BVs or prior auths or claim statuses, clinical ones like pre-colonoscopy scans or health risk assessments or being able to do patient-reported outcome measures. So many of them. On the co-pilot side, there's a set of them as well. I'll give one example. So if you have a large revenue cycle management team or a credentialing team for your physician network or your nurse network, you are constantly calling insurance companies. And when your team calls them, they sit there waiting on hold. And nobody wants to spend their day waiting on hold. And nobody wants to pay people to sit there waiting on hold. Well, what Fast Track, which is our AI co-pilot for this does, it goes through the IVR, it waits on hold, and it then drops in our customers' employees when the person on the other side picks up. So while you're on call number one, call number two, three, and four can be waiting on hold, so that as soon as you finish one, the next one is ready. And the system just drives a lot of efficiency for those teams, again, that are overworked and understaffed to be able to support more and more patients.
No, I completely agree with you. I was thinking about this actually today in the clinic, and I was thinking about our interview and the nurse sitting next to me, and she was calling insurance. And while she was calling, she was literally loudly, she was saying, "Oh, I hate calling insurance." And she was calling insurance, dialing numbers and staying on hold. I was like, there is a solution for that, by the way. This is like the most simple thing, like on everyday basis. Like the nurses who work with me in the clinic or with any other physician or the nurse practitioners or physician assistants, they call pharmacists, they call insurance to ask about like if it's authorized or not authorized, or like or like even to call patients to confirm their appointment. You can't imagine the amount, and this is something I wrote about, is like the financial toxicity. For example, in my field, cancer, like many patients miss their treatment because they miss to answer the person who's calling them during work hours, because people are working and they can't answer their phone. AI agents can do this at night. AI agents can do this at the weekend. AI agents can do this repeatedly until the person on the other side answers and confirm their appointment. So there is so much need for this. Yeah. Um, I want to also um, talk more about Infinitus. Do you have like a success story where like you were able to change like by numbers? If you don't, that's completely fine. But any like healthcare organization benefited from Infinitus by number, they increased their revenue or decreased the number of their people waiting on the line, or their patients benefited, like any real life stories?
Yeah, yeah, we support 44% of the Fortune 50, so we work with a lot of the largest healthcare entities in the country. There's a few different numbers that we've shared publicly. We tend to drive the average phone call because of the efficiency of talking to an AI agent in the back office. The calls are 30% shorter. So
Yeah,
whether you're the person making the phone call who's now saving time or the one receiving the call, not even our customer, it's a win because you're now saving time. This is a business to business phone call that's happening, like a benefit verification or a prior authorization. Um, on the revenues, on the cost side, we tend to be 30 to 40% cheaper than a human. So there's some savings on that side as well. And then probably the two most important ones, Roupen, one, our turnaround times are significantly better than Teams. We can do it faster, and our quality is consistently 10 to 15% higher than the equivalent work done by people. And the reason for that is we're automating routine, tedious work, which 8 a.m. on Monday morning, you can do fresh. 3 p.m. on Friday, you're kind of tired.
exactly.
And it's important to have humans do the work that is at the top of their license. And a lot of the work that we are automating is near the bottom of their license, and it's not the work that they really joined healthcare to do. So unlocking that actually brings the best out in every aspect of the system.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think for the sake of time, I will move on to my last question. Where do you see, or how do you see the role of AI changes in healthcare? And what should people or entrepreneurs and CEOs who are coming to healthcare keep in mind when they're trying to apply AI? What are the areas where will benefit the most from AI or will change the most with AI?
Well, I think it's been said over and over again out there that this is the golden age of AI, and there's going to be, just like there was a point when enterprise applications were the hot thing, the next 2 years, it's all going to be about AI agents. And I have no doubt that that's going to be the case. There's going to be thousands upon thousands of AI agents. And so if I was a CIO at a healthcare entity, or if I was, as I am a startup founder, I think about a future where there are thousands of these agents. Every healthcare enterprise will want to take advantage of thousands of these agents, but none of those enterprises are designed to become AI agent factories of how do you integrate these agents. And so what needs to come up in the next couple of years are pieces of infrastructure, are the foundations of how you manage a bunch of AI agents, of how you orchestrate AI agents, how the inputs of outputs of one AI agent become the inputs of another AI agent, and how do AI agents and human agents work together, almost workforce management for a world full of agents, some AI and some human. That orchestration layer is going to be incredibly important for us as an ecosystem to build. And that's not going to happen in isolation. It's going to happen in a partnership between healthcare entities and technology entities. And I'm excited for that future and the role that we will play in that. But I think it's something that the ecosystem needs to come together and really solve.
I love it. I completely agree with that. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you being here today, and thank you so much for sharing all this about you and Infinitus with our audience.
Amazing. Thanks for having me.